Tonight on Studio 12, from back to school stress on students to community resilience, a family therapist shares his advice for teens. Denver Health CEO Donna Lynn reflects on her leadership through crisis, and we explore how gardens can help us heal. Plus, the high energy sounds of the Burroughs. All that right now on Studio 12.
From the 5 Points Media Center in the heart of Denver, Colorado, this is Studio 12.
Hi, I'm Bazi Kanani, and welcome to Studio 12. Ryan is out tonight. Back to school season is here, and it's exciting. But it also comes with pressure, anxiety, and a lot of change. For many students, those first several weeks back in the classroom can feel overwhelming. That's why we sat down with licensed family therapist Ryan Long. He shares his advice for teens on how to handle stress, find balance, and keep mental health a priority as the new school year begins. Here's our conversation.
Being a teenager, especially nowadays, not easy. Going back to school, starting a new school, jumping into new classes with new teachers, not easy. Hello, my name is Ryan Long, and I am a licensed professional counselor. I'm also a licensed marriage and family therapist. I have been working with adolescents and kids and teens and families and young adults for almost 30 years now. I run groups with teenagers, and I love working and helping people. As you are going back to school, you are going to notice most likely some stress and anxiety. It's a transition. You had summer, you could stay up late and do whatever you want all day long, or maybe you had a job, or maybe you're hanging with your friends, and now all of a sudden you're having to go to bed early, you're waking up early, you're going to school, and you have a lot of things that you're juggling. So it's important to recognize and realize and even name the emotions that you're feeling as you're heading back to school. There could be stress, there could be anxiety, there could be just this anxiety around trying to fit in, trying to make friends, trying to make connections. You're getting used to the school, you're getting used to the layout, the classrooms, the teachers. It is a lot of changes and transitions, but it is very common to be anxious and stressed and worried about all of these changes. It's important for you to realize, to be self-aware of what's happening inside of your brain and in your heart. So what's happening inside of your body. Okay, this is where I'm at, this is what I'm thinking, and also this is how I'm feeling right now. And then when you name it and you can recognize it, it then gives you the ability to talk about it. And when you can talk about it, when you can vent, when you can share, when you can put words to your emotions and your thoughts, it can bring happiness, it can bring a sense of calmness. Also, when you start back to school, there's all this pressure to jump into sports and extracurricular activities. It's not uncommon to be anxious and worried about, am I gonna make new friends this year? Am I going to fit in? How do I look? How are people gonna perceive me? Am I being too much? Am I being too loud? Do I have the right shoes on? All of those thoughts and feelings are normal, and to recognize it as such. Also, when you're getting back into school, don't forget, you're jumping in, and now you have all these different things that you have to do, that you need self-care. Right when you get home, make sure you've got some downtime. You're not gonna wanna just jump in. You gotta make sure that, or try to organize it or schedule to where you've just done this 6, 7, 8 hour long school day, some downtime. So you can relax, reset, recharge, do some things that you wanna do for a little bit. You're sitting a lot of the day, you're learning a lot of the day, you're tired. It's tricky because for a lot of you, you're gonna wanna be jumping on screens. Jumping on screens a short amount of time, that can be pretty good or helpful. Where it becomes unhealthy or not helpful is when we get home and now we want to spend hours on our phones or hours in front of YouTube and hours, and that actually does the opposite. It doesn't recharge you, it actually drains you. And the studies show You can be more anxious, more worried, just more on edge. Longer sessions of screen time, it is not healthy or good for us, and does not count as self-care. Good self-care for you teenagers would look like getting good sleep at night, getting exercise, movement and playing sports and being outside is good self-care. Self-care could look like spending time with my friends, doing something enjoyable, picking up or doing some kind of new hobby or playing an instrument. Those kinds of things are good self-care. Through our failures, through our difficulties, through our tough days, that we have a positive self-talk, that we have what's called a growth mindset. A growth mindset means, hey, you know what? I didn't make the soccer team, but I know I'm sad, I'm really disappointed, but maybe there's a different sport that I could pick up. I didn't do well on this test. These were the things that I did to prepare for the test. Maybe next time I could prepare a little bit more, or I could prepare maybe a little differently next time. You're going to want to have the urge to compare yourself. Compare yourself with what you're wearing. Compare yourself with, oh, they're an extrovert, I'm an introvert, I'm not as good, I'm inferior, I'm less than, or even compare yourself academically, my grades, or I'm not as smart. The key is that you are being you, not that you are trying to be somebody else. You are going to notice at times for that desire to fit in that you might do things that maybe aren't you, or that are a little bit risky, and to make friends with people that will respect your priorities, your values, your boundaries. Rather than trying to be popular and fit in with everybody, I think the main key is finding your people. Finding the people that you know that you like them and they like you, rather than having this stress to be liked by everybody. It could be 2 or 3 people, it could be 10 people. Good, strong connections rather than a bunch of meaningless acquaintances that we don't really know or that we don't really care about. We're all gonna make mistakes. We're all gonna have a test where we don't do perfect on. We're all gonna have these things where we are not perfect, and it's important to realize we're human, we're gonna make mistakes, and that through those mistakes that we can grow and that we can learn from those mistakes. It's important to have realistic goals around homework and amount of time that you can spend every day. I've noticed with a lot of teenagers, they won't do anything Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then all of a sudden Thursday, they're trying to catch up 4, 5, 6 hours of homework and studying. Well, that is very stressful to leave it all for one day, but it's also not very efficient. With the way our brains work, shorter segments of studying are actually more efficient and effective. So trying to keep an even pace throughout the week where you decide, okay, I'm gonna do 30 minutes every day or an hour every day is a lot more effective than trying to do 4, 5, 6, 7 hours in one day or one weekend. I've noticed a lot of kids, they don't even know what they need to do. They don't even know what they need to do when they get home. So it's throughout your school day, having some place where you're keeping track of what needs to get home, so that when you do get home, you can go through, okay, I have soccer tonight, but I also have these 2 sheets of math homework and I need to study for my science test. And then that way you have a rough idea of how much time it's most likely going to take. Being a kid today is difficult. There are a lot of pressures, there's a lot of expectation, there's a lot of peer pressure to be a certain way or to do certain things, to look a certain way. Find your support. What are those activities that you do like to do? Just give yourself grace. Your moods might be different for a little while, and not just to accept it, but to expect it. That most likely that what you're experiencing is due to the change and transition, but that it's not going to be like that for the entire school year.
Some great insights from Ryan there, reminding us that mental health is just as important as academics. If you or a student you know is struggling, don't hesitate to reach out for help, whether that's through a school counselor, a trusted adult, or professional resources available in your community. One of those resources is the 988 Colorado Mental Health Line, which provides free 24/7 support by call, text, or live chat. Youth can also receive up to 6 free therapy sessions through imattercolorado.org with services in English and Spanish. Again, visit imattercolorado.org to learn more. This year, the Colorado Women's Chamber of Commerce honored Dr. Donna Lynn with its highest distinction, the Legacy Award, part of the 2025 Top 25 Most Powerful Women in Business. The award recognizes women whose lifetime contributions have left a lasting impact on Colorado's business community and opened pathways for future generations. As Simone D. Ross, CEO of the Chamber, explained, Dr. Lynn has used every platform she's had to drive better outcomes for Coloradans, especially women, families, and underserved communities. Her servant leadership and transformational change have been instrumental in shaping a stronger, more inclusive future for our state. From New York City government during some of its most turbulent years, to leading in healthcare through times of crisis, to serving as Lieutenant Governor of Colorado. Donna Lynn's career has been defined by resilience, service, and an unwavering commitment to community. PBS 12's Franny Matthews sat down with Denver Health CEO Donna Lynn to hear about the fiscal emergencies, public health challenges, and shifting political landscapes she's worked through. She talked with us about the lessons she's learned along the way and the values that continue to drive her leadership.
Donna, you're being recognized for an amazing career in leadership. You've had varying experiences and you've had lots of different sectors that you've worked in.
I've always been motivated when I think about the work that I've done by a quote from Marian Wright Edelman, which is, "Service is the rent that we pay." And I really believe that, and I've always been motivated by trying to do for others who may not have, whether they're underprivileged, underrepresented. That's been my primary motivation.
You spent the first 20 years in the New York City government. That means that, was it 3 different administrations?
It was actually 4 administrations in New York City government, so 4 different mayors. And from 1976 into the early 90s. When I first entered service in New York, the city was literally bankrupt. The city went to the federal government and said, "We need help." And they were told, "Figure it out yourself." And so we began a pretty challenging process of, unfortunately, cutting our expenses, which meant laying off employees, borrowing money from pension funds, doing some innovative things that would put the city back on a fiscal stability platform. And boy, I learned a lot in that time. And then ultimately found healthcare as a passion because those employees and their dependents needed the basic healthcare benefits, and they cost a lot of money even back then.
Those early days were when the AIDS epidemic was breaking out, and that was a very big issue in New York City.
Actually, during that time, I worked for the public hospital system in New York, and we were focused on not only treating those patients, but also dealing with a spike in crime in New York. That meant unfortunate circumstances for many people, but for the hospital and the healthcare system, people coming in with gunshot wounds and other difficult conditions was definitely eye-opening to me. But seeing some of the impact that the healthcare system was experiencing, including the employees, definitely motivated me to think much more broadly about how do you lead in a difficult environment where employees are challenged by the things that they have to face.
Yeah. You've also drawn a comparison to nature and the shifting landscape to what it looks like to be a leader. You went to base camp, right? On Everest?
I did go to base camp in Everest, and I've climbed a lot of mountains here in Colorado and internationally, which, again, it's one of those things, if you had told my 22-year-old self or even my 32-year-old self that I would be doing these things, I would have said, you're crazy. But I've used the shifting landscape in climbing, from changes in heat, changes in conditions that sometimes make the climb more difficult, to focus on being resilient in those instances, because it's always easy to turn around and it's always easy to quit. I'm not a quitter, and so persevering through that kind of adversity is really important to me, because I do want the ultimate prize, which in climbing is the peak.
So how do you take care of yourself so that you can be resilient?
Well, I'm not so sure I take care of myself, but I do get a lot of enjoyment about working. And sometimes people, including my children, will say, "Why are you still working, Mom?" And I say, because not only do I feel responsible for the people that work for me, but I feel actually motivated by them, because they are dealing, particularly in healthcare, with that. The work at the front line can be exhausting. It can be rewarding, but it can also be very challenging. I am so honored to work alongside the people at Denver Health who are dealing with our 280,000 patients every single day. And that is a tough job. I always say a good day is when I am walking out of this office and into one of our clinics or into the hospital or into other environments and hearing from them, but also trying to be authentic myself when there are problems or issues that we're going to have to confront.
Trust is probably the cornerstone of really building a healthy culture.
We have an aspiration to be the most trusted healthcare provider in Colorado. That's not a small task, and trust has to be earned with your employees, with your patients, and with the community. I did encounter a couple of situations where a particular community said, I'm going to go through some of the things we think you did wrong. And so when I listened to the members of that community, it wasn't about arguing. I mean, I think I'm a pretty good debater. It was really about listening and then reflecting on how could I have done it better, or how could the organization have done it better. So I think that's a really important skill. I believe in the institutions I work for. I want to defend them, but there's lots of different viewpoints about how things should be managed, and so I think listening is really important.
I really liked your comments about listening to other people, and I think that's a good lesson for all of us right now in this time of polarization, that people have different points of view, and if you're just talking in an echo chamber, you're not learning much.
Where I think I struggle, and I think many of us struggle, is healthcare is life and death. It isn't about, should a sign read a certain way, or should we have a tariff or not, but to the extent that there are huge differences in how people think about healthcare. I mean, we're talking about lives, and so I take that very seriously, and so that might be the time when maybe I'm not going to listen as much and I'm going to fight. I'm putting on my fighting clothes. Particularly in the environment we're in right now, I mean, both here at Denver Health being an important safety net for the city and actually for the state, being faced with a lot of challenges, whether they're from the federal government, the state, or the city. And I've been fortunate because having worked in all three sectors, I actually worked for the federal government when I was a youngster. And so I've worked for the federal government, the state government, and city government. And it gives me an appreciation for the work that they do and the difficulty, but also the way to communicate with them, the way to compromise, the way to problem solve. And I think that's really important for anybody who's in business. And there's often not that understanding.
A quote that I like of Donna's, which is very stoic. We can neither ignore nor react to every obstacle. What do you mean by that?
Well, I think, as I said, it's easy to get overwhelmed by the things that are being thrown at you, change, or, as a leader, it's natural that your people move on to other jobs. And I had this one circumstance where somebody that I had cultivated and was just so proud of and so important to the team, one day said, "I'm going to leave." And my initial reaction was, "You can't do that to me." And then I pulled back and said, wait, part of my job as a leader is to develop other leaders. And the fact that this person is going to go on to a much bigger job and bigger opportunity, I had to say, don't treat that as it's just happening to you, Donna. Treat it as part of your leadership role is to create opportunity for people.
If I look at your resume, what I see is that you execute against a plan, you understand operationalizing, you understand the details. And I think that may be your superpower, to have that big picture thinking and then be able to make it a reality. Does that ever tug on back and forth with you, or does it just fit really neatly?
No, I think I got to a place, I've always worked in very large workplaces, with one exception. I ran a nonprofit with 8 employees for 2 years. I think it was the hardest job I ever had.
I agree with you.
So but I've mostly come from huge, hundreds of thousands, tens of thousands kind of organizations. And it is a struggle to think, my job is to set strategy. My job is to be financially responsible, maybe to report to a board. We have several boards here at Denver Health, for example. My job is to motivate. At the same time, I can't be casual about details because I'm putting myself out publicly to affirm whatever it is that I'm recommending. Let's say let's build a new building in such and such location. Well, I need to understand, how much does it cost? What are the financial risks? What are the opportunities? And so, quite frankly, I succeed by having that sort of big picture focus, but the willingness to ask a lot of difficult questions. I don't need to get my hands into everything. I have a great team, and I've always had great teams and felt like my responsibility is building those teams. Integrity is a huge factor in the work that I do and the work that I've done, because there's so much intersection with the public. And I often think, is what I'm doing, or what we are doing as an organization, could it be a newspaper headline? And what would be the fallout if what we did was a newspaper headline? And that becomes a little bit of a North Star that, there's lots of people who have been brought down by silly things. They accepted tickets to the Super Bowl, or maybe they cut corners. And those, the other expression, it takes a lifetime to build a reputation and one incident to destroy it. And believe me, that's always in my head. So integrity of the organization and integrity of the leaders is a critical part of what I believe in.
So Donna, I want to ask you about a specific instance at Denver Health. Lots of financial obstacles and concerns, and a ballot issue went out, 2Q. And because of our Tabor law, it needs to go to the voters, and it passed. Tell me about that journey, because you had to do a lot of work to make sure everybody understood how important this is.
No, thanks. And 2Q, thanks to the voters in Denver, has created some financial stability for Denver Health, and that's really important, particularly where we might be headed in the future. The first thing that I did when I came here one of the first things was to talk to other executives in my position around the country. And the more I talked to them from Dallas, Houston, Indianapolis, and other large cities where an urban safety net is important, the more I learned that their city or their county supported them in ways that our city wasn't supporting Denver Health. There's a lot of history to that, and knowing that the city itself had limited resources, I started thinking, well, what else could I do? And part of that was building a community of important people, former elected officials, current elected officials, business leaders, nonprofit leaders, and actually posing the problem to them. I kind of knew what the answer was, but I said, first of all, we spent time telling them the breadth of what we do, but let them work on possible solutions. And so I had a wonderful group of about 30 community leaders who helped us problem solve and get us to the point where we could make a recommendation, we could go to the city council, we could get something on the ballot, and then ultimately run a campaign. And that process took a full year. And I think what helped us pass the measure was the engagement of the community leaders, the endorsement of key community leaders, and a process where I didn't just say, I know the answer, this is what we're going to do. I listened, I learned from them, and then we turned it into a proposal.
Well, thank you for taking the time.
You're welcome. Thanks.
Again, that was Donna Lynn, the current CEO of Denver Health, which is Colorado's largest safety net hospital. Our thanks again to Dr. Lynn for sharing her story. At Denver Urban Gardens, it's not just about what you can see growing, it's also about what you can touch, smell, and hear, too. A sensory garden is designed to spark curiosity and awaken the senses. We talk to Jungle Judy about it and get a closer look.
So we've got another type of a garden that we started to do here at Denver Urban Gardens. And this is recognizing that gardening is really important for food access. We want to feed our bodies. But in order to kind of promote that feeling of whole body wellness, we also need to feed our spirit and our soul. So gardening to me appeals to what can you touch, what can you smell, what can you hear, what can you eat, what can you feel, all those things. What can you use medicinally? So my colleague, Laura Fanistock, has started a program here called our Therapeutic Gardens. And she has classes online or in person that people can take. But what this garden is, it appeals to people who learn in many different ways. Ooh. Children who might be living on the autism scale, people who might garden using a wheelchair, people who might have memory challenges, who just learn, who might be overstimulated. So this provides a place that says, a garden needs all of you. And just like we were talking about turning over the leaves, this says, stay with me. So it has pathways that really designate, that are wide enough, with repurposed materials. These were aspen logs that we used from another project that say, come and sit here. Smell these flowers, which smell like licorice. So a place of calming, where if caseworkers are working with students, they can come out and sit down here and say, oh, I planted this just for you, feel this. So if anybody is feeling stressed out, they can feel the softness of this silver mound artemisia. They can say, this almost looks like the comb of a rooster. And you can do flower crafts with children later on, or status that you can do crafts with. So I love this concept. You know, it works well for everybody. Little guys, seniors, people that are experiencing different challenges, or people that just want to know, in addition to the citronella, which repels mosquitoes, this feels so good. I just want to come here after work. We are trying to incorporate sensory gardens or sensory techniques into everything that we do to welcome people to a whole palette of gardening experience which heals.
For more information and resources about gardening, you can go to dug.org. Colorado, the city of Denver, and the federal government remain divided on immigration policies, even as federal officials continue to pressure local governments to comply. Let's check in with Kyle Dyer for some perspectives from our panel on Colorado Inside Out.
Hi, Bazi. You know, Denver and Colorado remain in the hot seat. The federal government wants the city and the state to get rid of laws that say how involved local police can be with ICE agents who are looking for people who are here illegally. Let's listen into the perspectives that were discussed around the table on Colorado Inside Out. Denver's financial problems follow a lot of years of a lot of spending, including around, $350 million spent since the end of 2022 on helping migrants who showed up here in the city with nowhere to go. Our city's welcoming nature has not only gotten us in trouble financially, but also with the federal government. This week, a report came out that immigration arrests have quintupled in Denver, and Attorney General Pam Bondi placed another warning on Denver and the state of Colorado to roll back the laws that keep local law enforcement from working hand in hand at all times with ICE officers. Or else, the quote was, "We will come after you." And to that, local leaders are saying, we're not budging. So let's start with you.
Well, Pam Bondi said that the federal government will withhold funds if 11 states don't respond by saying we will comply with federal law. Our governor, Jared Polis, responded by saying, we're not a sanctuary state. What are you saying? How are we not a sanctuary state? We have state and local law enforcement are not allowed to hold people on immigration status. We have local law enforcement not able to share information on immigration status, and we have no agreements with ICE to hold people based on immigration status. So when we don't have any kind of agreement or cooperation with what the federal government is doing, then I don't think that we can make the case that we're not a sanctuary state. So I'm not quite sure what will happen, but we will see.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. Laura?
Yeah. Well, I think AG Bondi, her use of extortion as a way to govern a democracy is problematic. By our laws, we have decided how we're going to police and how we are going to relate to the federal government in terms of immigration. I think, and then starting in July, we began to see that ICE detentions have increased for those populations that have not yet had a final decision on their cases. And so does that mean that ICE has already gone through all the criminals, all those with outstanding warrants for arrest, and now they're just picking up anybody who doesn't look American, which I would say in their eyes is probably people who are brown and black. And so to me, that is clearly racial discrimination, and I think there's a lot of fear in the Latino community around that issue.
Mm-hmm. Patty?
We can't backtrack on what happened with the migrants when they came to Denver. I mean, I guess we could have just sent them all back to Texas when they were bussed up here, which would have just moved the problem to someone else. But we did become a welcoming city, whether or not it was a sanctuary city. The response was due on Tuesday to Pam Bondi, who certainly is a genius legal person. So everyone sent back their responses. The mayor, the state. What's also interesting is there's really no legal definition for sanctuary cities, so it's just kind of whoever you want to say is one. We've proclaimed sanctuary at certain times when people go into churches, but it's not a legal definition for governments, and that's something we have to remember. We also have to remember we don't have police. Their first job is not to monitor who's crossing the border. That's not what a municipal police department does. They fight crime, they work for safety in their city or the municipality. So if ICE isn't doing its job, that's a different thing. We should worry about traffic and burglary and all the other things the police here handle. If they find someone who's in the files who is a criminal, who's evading ICE, that's a different issue.
Shame on Bondi. I mean, how many of these Republicans carry a pocket constitution and apparently never glance at it? There's something called the 10th Amendment. The 10th Amendment says anything that is not specifically in the Constitution that the federal government is supposed to do, that those things go to the states. And local law enforcement, including how immigrants are handled by local law enforcement, is a state prerogative, period. They have absolutely no right to tell states what they're going to do. And should police work with ICE? I think that's something that should be discussed by legislators and determined there. But there's reasons for the way Colorado does things. Could there be more communication with the feds? Possibly. but we want to also make sure that immigrants who are here illegally, who are victims of crime, still feel like they can approach the police. I mean, think about it. A woman who, she may be here illegally, who is abused by a partner and feels that she cannot go to the police, is going to be continuously abused and possibly killed unless she can get justice and some alleviation for her situation. So shame on Bondi, and I also think that ultimately the Supreme Court, as this moves its way up, will find that these 11 states are in the clear and are backed by the 10th Amendment of the Constitution.
That is just one of 4 topics we discussed on the latest Colorado Inside Out. You can watch the full episode anytime on pbs12.org or on the PBS Passport app or on our YouTube channel. And CIO is also a podcast, which can be found on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. And it would be an easy thing to listen to while you're on the road heading somewhere for the Labor Day weekend. Now, if you're staying at home this Friday, join us at 8 here on PBS 12.
We're taking you to Southern Oregon now for a powerful short film that shows how fire, when used wisely, can actually heal the land. Burning to Heal tells the story of community members, landowners, and firefighters who are using prescribed burns to recover from devastating wildfires and to protect against the next one. And while this story is rooted in Oregon, its message hits pretty close to home here in Colorado. Already this season, massive wildfires have scorched over 200,000 acres in our state, forcing new fire restrictions and testing communities from the western slope to the Front Range. As we enter the height of wildfire season, the lessons from this film feel even more urgent than ever.
It's really important to understand that fire is in our future. How we deal with that reality, that's an emotional process. It's also an educational process. And, with the broadcast burning we're doing, it can also be an experiential process. I think that one of the benefits of doing community-led broadcast burns, prescribed burns, is the ability to reclaim what fire means for people.
Now with the way that the fire crisis is going, a lot of people are looking for answers and trying to figure out how they can make their communities safer, make the land healthier. This is about community empowerment. It's about a community making decisions for itself, for the kind of future that it wants living with fire.
We're in Southern Oregon. For us here in the Rogue Valley, when we think of fire, often the first thing we think about is how many homes we lost in 2020. It had been a red flag day all over the state. There was a lot of loss that day. There were over 2,500 homes burned. The majority of the affordable housing in our valley were wiped out in a single day.
My family was evacuated. I was off duty, but went down to help, as did virtually everybody in my department. I ended up working that night on my road. So the fire line was my road where my house is. It's challenging even now, to work through the social impacts, on the schools, the community.
So it was a huge impact here. And really reshaped and redefined how we dealt with the entire community since.
I think both personally and professionally, the silver lining with the Alameda fire is that it raised awareness of the risks in our area, in our state.
I think for a lot of people, that was a really traumatizing event, of course. And it's led to a lot of thinking about what can we do to avoid that? How can we move forward and have a different relationship with fire, one that's not based on fear and waiting for the inevitable smoke plumes that are going to come in July and August and September and waiting for fires to happen. But instead, we can re-envision our relationship with fire so that it looks something more like this.
Yeah, it would be hard to, with a straight face, advocate for certain approaches to wildfire mitigation if we didn't have an experience it ourselves. I'm a rural landowner, and I figure I should go through it first so I know what I'm talking about when I recommend this kind of practice to another person. Myself, this has been about a 12-year process, asking questions about what the land might want, what the land might benefit from, and then asking with the new lens of, okay, how do I manage a forest? How do I steward a forest? And hopefully I'll be able to take that experience and that education that I've gleaned and, pay it forward to my neighbors. We've gone through and mechanically thinned probably about 50 acres at this point. Bringing back fire is sort of one of the final steps, and we're going to be doing a community-led broadcast burn. When I brought the Rogue Valley Prescribed Burn Association, when I brought Aaron up here, he was like, well, this is ready to go. And I was just really excited.
But you see, the mechanical fuel reduction didn't remove all the fine fuels that generally carry wildfire. And so if a wildfire came through here now, it still could rage at a high intensity. So using controlled burning to come through and consume the fine fuels helped make this stand safer in the future.
For a long time, it's been difficult for people to do prescribed fire on private land. You know, that's just the way it was fire belonged to professionals only, and you needed to have expert qualifications, and it made it seem like there was no role for the ordinary landowner, community member to access this kind of knowledge, this kind of tool. And so obviously a landowner can't just do this by themselves. It takes a village, it takes a whole community to make this happen. So now we're helping to put that back in the hands of people with the right skill, the right equipment, and following all the appropriate permitting processes and so on. So who here, this is your first prescribed burn? Cool, look around. Nice, welcome, exciting.
One of the things that's really valuable about the Prescribed Burn Association and the way that we facilitate prescribed burns with bringing such a wide range of experience, just actual genuine skill sharing, where it's like, okay, you live here, you live in this area, fire is part of where we live, you've got to learn how it works.
Who's here to learn? Who's here to teach? That was a trick question. You should raise your hand both times, all of you. Because we all have something to share, and we all have something to learn.
Generally, when we see flames, we're thinking about how best to stop them. You know, where do we put people, vehicles, water to put them out as quickly as possible? In this case, it was a shift where I'm helping folks put fire on the ground to create a safer, more resilient, healthier environment. And so for me, it was a shift for sure. But once we got underway and worked through the process, it felt comfortable.
You know, a prescribed burn is essentially the opposite of a wildfire. So when a wildfire starts, it's usually pushed by the wind or it's going upslope and it runs really fast. And so what we're doing with a prescribed fire is we're doing the opposite. We start it at the top of the hill and then we're making it come down the slope bit by bit. We're taking little chunks here, one after another, little strips, until we get all the way to the bottom.
This was my first day on a prescribed burn, and coming from the suppression world, it was an interesting shift in my thinking.
People are very cautious because there's a long-term vision for this. It's not worth taking any kind of risks.
There were moments when, you know, this suppression side of me wanted to do something about, you know, the heat of the fire. And I had to learn techniques on how to use the firing, you know, the drip torches to kind of control the amount of heat and where fire was actually going.
Somebody who it's their first day on a fire line, any kind of fire line, are encouraged, if they want, to pick up a drip torch and, guided by somebody who knows what they're doing, walk through a 7-acre unit and, you know, strategically lay good fire on the ground. And that's a very rare opportunity, which is something that's really special and unique about this project.
This isn't the first time I personally have used a torch. I grew up on a reservation, and just using fire in this way, I call it good fire. I'm seeing a lot of my other co-crew leads and other members being able to use the torch for the very first time in their whole life. Just put a smile to my face. They were happy, and that makes me happy.
When you see fire and you look at the landscape, you see what it is naturally consumed, and it translates really well to structure defense and making your home defensible, because then you're able to see what fire would consume and you're able to cut that yourself. It kind of demystifies the like, oh, for fire safety, we have to clear cut, just straight up, outright, all the trees are the problem. When it's like, no, it's because we've delved into such a culture of repression for 100 years or so.
Being able to use all of this knowledge that we only had as knowledge, we now have as experience. This learning experience for them and me is beyond invaluable. That was probably our biggest takeaway for the day.
Tucker was fortunate enough to get a large grant to get the mechanical fuel reduction done on his property, so he didn't have to pay for all of it. But moving forward, all of this brush is going to grow back. But thankfully, because he had the Prescribed Burn Association come out and do this burn, he can now maintain it much more economically than if he were to try and do mechanical fuel reduction again in the future, because it's unlikely that he would get a grant again in the future. This whole area around us, the West Bear Project, has had millions of dollars of fuel reduction work done just recently in the past few years. And so if prescribed burning is not used to maintain that work, the fuels are all going to grow back and all of that money is going to have been wasted. If you're going to hire a contract crew, a mechanical fuel work is something in the $1,600 to $2,300 an acre range. And controlled burning, if you were hiring a contract crew, would probably be in the $800 to $1,000 an acre range. And the work we did today was in the buy some soda and sandwiches for everybody who volunteer range and pay for the drip torches. So it's a much more cost-effective way to do this work as well.
This isn't a simple one-step process. People who were here first, the people who came before us, have been using fire to their benefit for really ever, for time immemorial, right? But I do want to make sure that we acknowledge and respect the fact that we are relearning what those people have been practicing. We need to reevaluate our relationship to fire and learn how we can actually do good with it.
A lot of people came out here to see fire on the ground. They wanted to take part. What I said is, I'm here to see community. I'm here to see what the future could look like when we work together as communities, as neighbors, agencies, fire departments, everybody working together to make this happen. This isn't easy. It took a lot of planning. It took a lot of people agreeing that the vision of this community is a realistic and responsible one. And I see happy people working together, getting to know each other, feeling a sense of accomplishment that they're going to go home tonight knowing that their community is a little bit safer and the landscape around them is a little bit healthier. But everybody coming together behind this vision. So that's the thing that really is inspiring to me.
The collaborative nature of controlled burning with the Prescribed Burn Association is absolutely critical that we have partners that are involved. Landowners can't do this on their own. Community members can't do it on their own.
Us providing water, to us, it's no big deal. But to them, it meant a lot. So that's where coming together, different groups, different agencies, different people can really have huge benefits.
People should kind of work together to do it themselves and build this community cohesiveness. That's really the goal of this. And the Prescribed Burn Association can actually spread to many Prescribed Burn Associations. We shouldn't have a Rogue Valley Prescribed Burn Association. We should have an Anderson Creek Prescribed Burn Association, a Wagner Creek Prescribed Burn Association. Each neighborhood should work together to protect their own community. So that's kind of this democratization of prescribed burning so that we don't have to have big groups coming down to donate lots of money to do fuel reduction work for us every 15 years or 20 years, because that's not sustainable. We need to kind of take responsibility for it and have communities actually work towards this goal of community resilience on their own.
My hope is that in the future, what this landowner has done here and what the Prescribed Burn Association has done will expand. More people will do what we did here today.
I always think you should leave it better than you found it. It took us years and years and decades to get into where we are now with the wildfire risk in the Pacific Northwest. And it's going to take us years and years and decades to get out of it. I think that doing this kind of work is just one step in that really long process. I'm hoping that when my kid comes of age and he's the steward of this land, that I'll have left in a better place for him. He can move forward and build off what I built. If you're actively managing land and you're actively managing a forest, that work never stops. It's not a one and done thing. You have to continuously come back and ask and question to make the right choices for the land.
To find out more about the current wildfires burning in Colorado, as well as fire prevention and mitigation information, go to dfpc.colorado.gov. That's the website for Colorado's Division of Fire Prevention and Control. Up next on Sounds on 29th, get ready for the Burroughs. This 9-piece band has earned a reputation for their sweaty soul music. Frontman Johnny Burroughs combines his powerhouse vocals with horns for a unique sound. The Burroughs draws inspiration from Stevie Wonder to Beyonce, and they bring a deep sense of community to every performance. Here's one of those performances at Washington's music venue in Fort Collins. Thanks for watching Studio 12. Be sure to follow us on social media and on YouTube. And we'll see you next Tuesday night at 8. I'm Bazi Kanani. Have a great week.
I got a brand new walk, and if you want, then I'll teach it to you. I'm learning as I go, and every day gets a little more complicated. I'm still figuring it out. I'm still learning how to move. I'm still trying to find my groove. I may not have it down, but I can show you how to do the new walk. Step by step, moving one by one. Just another trip around the sun. Got to learn before I can run this new walk. Alright, Focal MX, I need your help on this one. Check it. Step 1, everybody have some fun. Shout hey on the 2, let me hear you now. Hey! Alright, who went to music school? Step 2, as you're learning what to do. Shout hey on the 3, let me hear you now. Hey! That's pretty good. Step 3, everybody follow me. Everybody shout it out on the 4, wait. Step 4, people if you want some more, then everybody shout it out. Say I'm alive, I'm alive. At least I'm trying to be step by step, moving one by one. Just another trip around the sun. Got to learn before I can run this new walk. One more time, y'all. Everybody shout, I'm alive. 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 Still figuring it out.
a lot of bands, either toxically or healthily, will be like say that they're family, right?
Yeah.
So, but you all really seem like you are. So if you were to compare your band to a famous family from fiction, what would it be?
Whoa, a famous family from fiction?
I gotta think of a healthy one.
Yeah.
You know, the Brady Bunch is like a nice blended family.
I would say Bob's Burgers.
Oh, yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, just like everyone's kind of wild and weird in their own ways, but it all kind of, that's also the glue. The weirdness is also the glue.
I'm gonna throw up a flag and say, all of us have worked in a lot of aspects of the arts and been in a lot of bands and projects, and I will plant my flag and say, I think we're pretty darn functional.
Yeah, I think so too. It's some pretty healthy vibes.
Yeah.
We like to be around each other. We support each other. Musically, we support each other outside of the band for sure. I mean, I think for a lot of us, honestly, it's like the thing that ties us to the place that we live. It's like the most important community in my life, really, for me. So, yeah.
What is one of the ways that you feel like you've really showed up for one another? Like, what can you give us an example? Because I don't think we get to hear a lot about that with band dynamics.
I have so many examples. I mean, like I've talked like band members coming over and building furniture for my kids, and bringing each other food when we know we've been having like a rough week.
Yeah, when both my kids were born, these two were the first people to like get it all assembled and get people giving us food, making sure we could sleep. And it's like true communal family vibes all the way through. I mean, you guys can probably think of way more than me.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's just like I literally talk to someone in the band, like honestly, like most of the band, like every day. You know, and it's not just about like things that we're working on, like sending each other messages. Like when I have like good news to share, it's this group of people that's the first to hear about. When I have bad news to share, it's this group of people that's like the first to hear about typically. So yeah.